Hey everybody, Brett from AstartesGaming here, back with another look at Chronicles of Elyria. So today we are going to be checking out Design Journal 6, which is all about character customization and bloodlines, which I think is going to be a very interesting topic for a lot of people. I think character creation in most games, especially MMOs, is really the biggest draw for a lot of people. I know personally I spend hours and hours in character customization. If you guys watched my live stream of like Fallout 4's release, I think I spent like 30 or 40 minutes just, changing what my character looked like. So I imagine you guys are probably in the same boat. So I think this will be pretty interesting. So let's take a look. In most MMOs, your predisposition to certain classes or occupations, starting village, physical appearance, and set of racial and regional traits are all determined by a single value, your character's race. Furthermore, those values are all static and identical for every member of the race. In Chronicles of Elyria, those values are dynamic and are determined by your choice of family. As discussed in last week's design journal, your predisposition for a certain occupation is based on the occupations of your parents. Intuitively, that makes sense. Yeah, okay, that's kind of like a weird sentence right there. It's very short. If you grow up in the household of a blacksmith and a carpenter, you'll be handier with a hammer and a chisel than, say, someone who grew up with two tailors. This predisposition manifests itself in-game as a set of starting skills. At the same time, your starting village is determined by where your family chooses to settle, not where your ancestors originated. So while travel is difficult and many families will stay close to home, others may choose to branch out and explore, finally settling in far-off, distant lands. The combination of your parents' occupations, your starting location, and your past life memories all work together to determine your character's starting skills and early development. But your choice of family doesn't just affect things generally associated with nurture. There's plenty of nature in there as well. In this week's design journal, we're going to take a look at the final screen of character creation, character customization, and talk about how your family selection impacts your physical appearance, inherited attributes, regional skills, and surnames. We'll conclude this week's journal by looking at how Chronicles of Elyria enables character customization to extend beyond the character creation screen. And so we've already taken a look at this, but we'll take a look at it again. You can see you have your mother and father's attributes here. Hopefully you guys can see my mouse. I think I changed it up so you guys can. And then you can see the mother had like hazel eyes, red hair, and a little bit darker, not necessarily dark, but a little bit more like tan complexion, where the father had blue eyes, black hair, and was very pale. And so that combines to give you this, or some degree of this. You can see here you're basically sliding back and forth between your mother's appearance and your father's appearance to kind of balance those out. And then you can choose like your mother's eye color, father's eye color, hair color, etc. So that's kind of cool. Alright, so genetics. This is always an interesting topic for me. I actually study genetics in school. That's not my major. That's just something that I tend to study quite a bit as a biology major. So Chronicles of Elyria uses a system of genetics that allows traits to be passed on from one generation to another. Like in our world, all living things have two sets of DNA, which are randomly sampled and used to determine the characteristics of their offspring. When talking about plants and animals, this allows players to create selective breeding programs, cross-pollinating and breeding until they get the outcome they're looking for. When talking about player customization, there's a bit more flexibility, but the idea is the same. So pretty much, I think they just confirmed that you can create genetically modified organisms, so you can have like GMO and non-GMO farms. For those of you who don't know what like the GMO issue is, there's people who don't like to eat like genetically modified foods, basically, so like corn that's been modified. The issue being that even from like the dawn of time, man has been genetically modifying plants by crossbreeding the most hardy corn plants together to grow more hardy corn plants, and so pretty much everything is genetically modified at this point. Every breed of dog, for the most part, is genetically modified. Corgis aren't a natural thing. Corgis were made by man, more or less. So yeah. Where were we? As seen in figures 1 and 3, there's a collection of physical attributes that get passed on from parents to children that include their hair, eye, and skin color, different facial features, height, and a range of other body attributes. On the left side of Figure 1, you can see that values for mother and father, which are randomly sampled from their genetic code. The right hand side of, sorry, I can't read as usual, of Figure 1 shows your ability to select specific values for your character's traits. As indicated by the slider, you're constrained by the values passed on from both parents, along with some slight variation on the outer edge of some attributes. So not only do you want to choose parents that are going to lend themselves to the skills that you want to learn, but you're also probably going to want to choose parents that look a certain way that you think you might want to look like. Because obviously, if you have two very unattractive parents, they're not going to necessarily make very attractive children, and if you want an attractive character, that might be hard to do. But again, there's ways out of that if you want to be a ward or something. So there are other options. Constraints placed on the child's physical appearance guarantees that the family members closely resemble one another. This makes it so characters who hail from one region of the world will be easily identifiable by others. At the same time, noble houses can become well known for a specific set of physical traits, such as auburn hair and green eyes. Or, in the case of the Lannisters, the blonde hair. But, yeah, so this is cool. It's definitely going to be very immersive to see family members that look alike rather than, you've got your family of player characters and two of them look fairly normal and then one's got pink skin and purple hair or something ridiculous. So at least this way, the world will be very immersive as far as the families and appearances are concerned. So mutations and rerolls. Those traits initially proposed during character customization are randomly sampled from your character's parents. However, they can include mutations. This gives us a chance to introduce new attributes, colors, etc. into the gene pool and can result in unique combinations such as red eyes and white hair, albinism, or albinos. In real genetics, albinism isn't a mutation, I believe. It's just it's a very, very recessive gene, and so the only way you become albino is if both of your parents have the recessive albinism gene, and you happen to get both of those from your parent. It's not something that just randomly happens in somebody. The parents have to actually be carrying that gene in order for it to happen. So that's your genetics lesson for today. We understand that sometimes people don't want the random mutations, though they can be cool, and sometimes just on the they can be cool thing. I think it'd be really, really cool if you could get the albinism trait. So you end up with a character who's very pale with white hair and red eyes, and everybody in your family line has that trait, and then your family is known for being the red-eyed clan or whatever. I think it'd be pretty cool. But anywho, and sometimes they don't like the initial set of values they were provided with for their physical appearance. For that reason, players are given one reroll to use during their character customization. Rerolling your attributes takes another random sample from the parents in order to create a second set of constraints. Like it or not, if you reroll, you're stuck with the second set of values. Okay, so you do get kind of a mulligan on your character's appearance. If you're not happy with the options, you can, roll the dice one more time, but you're stuck with it if you decide to do it. So if you're more or less happy with what you've got, probably best to just take it, and stick with the devil rather than risking it with the devil you don't. So, alright, races and racial traits. As Illyrians spread out across the map and settled in different locations, they began to develop adaptations that made them more suited for their current environments. Those that settled in dense forests were sheltered from the harsh rays of the sun. The constant climbing and the relentless noise of the jungle forced the inhabitants to become both strong and alert. In contrast, those that settled in the open deserts were frequently exposed to harsh and unforgiving sun and had to survive long periods of time with little water. Large birds of prey didn't differentiate between man and other food, and occupants of the world's deserts were required to travel in and out of the open quickly. That's interesting. So, large birds of prey, big enough to prey on men, that's going to be very, very interesting. I'm kind of curious what playing in the desert is going to be like with that. But I'm sure the forests have their dangers as well. The slow process of evolution and the need to survive has created several different races across Elyria. each with their own set of resistances and starting attributes. Families whose ancestors were forest dwellers will begin the game with higher than average strength and intuition, while desert dwellers will begin with increased agility and stamina. With more than a dozen biomes in Elyria, I think they've confirmed there's about 18. I think I mentioned that previously, but I think they've confirmed 18. There's a wide variety of different starting attributes. And unlike other MMOs, these racial differences are dynamic and will evolve as new families are created with parents from different bloodlines. So again, if you've got like desert mom and like forest dad, and you put them together, you're going to be some combination of the two, not like you got orc mom and elf dad, and you put them together and you're like orc kid and elf kid. They're going to have strengths and or weaknesses from both. And so you are essentially creating like a new race in the game when you combine them, although it's not necessarily a race. But you know what I mean. And so we've got a screenshot here of one of Elyria's darker forests. That looks really, really good. This is obviously pre-alpha, so I'm sure it's going to look differently. But even for just, pre-alpha screenshot, that's not bad. The lighting looks really, really good. Regional traits. You begin the game with a set of passive bonuses and skills that come from being raised in your specific environment. Grow up in the frozen north, the burning desert, a subterranean grotto, or in a bustling city, your character will start with a set of skills they've learned in order to survive. It should be noted that the racial skills and regional traits are two sides of a coin. One dictates starting attributes while the other dictates starting skills, nature, and nurture. It should also be pointed out that family, racial bloodlines, and regional traits are the three important variables that represent what is generally referred to as race in most MMOs. Together they define your predisposed occupations, starting attributes, starting skills, and starting skills. Whoops. I was running on with that sentence even though it ended. And aside from siblings, no other character will come from the same family, in the same location, from the same bloodline as you, creating an unlimited number of starting combinations. So what is in a name? Sorry, I think I cut that off. What is in a name? When selecting a family, you take over the life of one of their children. In order to maintain continuity, the lore establishes what is called a naming day. That's the day a character less than 18 years old chooses their new name, one that more closely describes who they are than the one they were born with. A player always takes over on their character's naming day. So if you're not happy with the name mom and dad gave you, you've been teased about it in school your whole life. When you turn 18, that's your chance to start over with a new name. So while you can give yourself a new given name, you are, for the time being, stuck with the surname of your family. The family name indicates which house you are from and which dynasty you're a part of. This is what affects your reputation and fame. At server launch, there will be dozens of surnames used across the map, so there will be plenty of variety to choose from. Don't like the surname you start with? That's okay too. As you play the game and complete achievements, you'll unlock new surnames. Surnames can change in some cases when developing a new village, and in most cases when you've completed a server first or server once achievement. For example, be the first person to slay a demon, and henceforth your line may be known as House Demonbane. I really hate that example. I think that's a terrible, just cheesy name, but whatever. There will be a complete set of crafting, adventuring, and humorous achievements solely for the purpose of allowing you to take on new surnames. One other thing to note though, while your surname may change, your dynasty does not. Once part of a dynasty, always part of that dynasty. Hopefully it's an optional change, because if I by some miracle or unfortunate event had to be the first one to kill a demon, I would not want to be Demonbane or whatever they decide this is going to be. Okay, so wards. We already talked a little bit about wards, but let's see what else there is. As we talked about in the last article, families and family selection, wards of the state are given more character customization in exchange for the benefits that come with being part of a family. As a result, their process of family selection and character customization is a bit different. First, after selecting the path of a ward, you'll be given the option to select which orphanage you'd like to join. Not all villages or towns have orphanages, and the number of residents supported is based on the orphanage's size. When selecting an orphanage, you'll have the ability to filter based on location, as well as which apprenticeships are available in that town. Your choice of orphanage will determine your starting location. Wards begin character customization by identifying which race or bloodline they're a part of. This sets the basic parameters for physical appearance as well as their starting attributes. While a ward isn't constrained by any particular appearance, they're still constrained by the wider features of their race. So basically, if you pick like, okay, I'm going to be a ward in a desert area, and I'm going to focus on, I don't know, scribing. Let's say scribing. So you'll have to go through all the different orphanages in the desert area, and some will have apprenticeships in scribing, some won't. And so obviously, if you want to be a scribe, you'll have to pick one that does. And then depending on the particular area you choose, you're going to be limited to the appearance options of somebody from that region. Now, that scope is a lot wider than the parents that you would get if you were to choose a family, but you're still going to have the same complexion roughly as somebody from that region, the same general hair color, the same general eye color for the most part, with some degree of variability. And then obviously, as far as facial features go, you'll have a pretty wide range to adjust, versus somebody who chose a family is going to have the facial features of their parents for the most part. Okay, so next, wards are able to use a point-buy system to set the skills they earned from birth to age 12. It's as if, in the absence of parents, they followed their heart and learned whatever skills interested them. As with characters who are part of a family, wards received the usual regional skills associated with growing up in their selective environment. So, all that's basically saying is, it's sort of like an RPG in that you get to allocate your base points or whatever, and then, if you choose, like in Skyrim, if you choose the Nord, you get the Nord's racial bonus, which is like cold resistance or whatever, and then they're slightly better with two-handed weapons. So that would be an example in Skyrim of how this would work. And so here we can see another character creation screen. This is customizing the body. Here you can see the mother and father's attributes, and then you can obviously balance between those two however you want. So, how character customization extends beyond character creation. When looking at the character customization screen, you may notice that aside from fairly detailed facial features, we're providing significantly fewer options for character customization than other MMOs. That's because we feel character customization should be dynamic and be as much a function of how a character spends their time as what players select during character creation. As a result, additional customization, such as your character's girth or how muscular or frail looking they are, is a function of how you play your character and will change over time. So if you play a warrior character, constantly out adventuring for long periods of time while facing dangerous enemies in physical combat, your character will look both lean and strong. On the other hand, if your character is a blacksmith, spending the majority of the day hammering an anvil but otherwise stationary, they may look both strong and a bit on the portly side. Play a bookworm, wandering bard, bartender, or innkeeper, and your character's appearance will match their occupations well. I feel like a blacksmith would not be portly. Just because you're only moving in a small area doesn't mean you're not busting your ass while you're doing it. And swinging a hammer all day is going to burn just as many calories as swinging a sword. Okay, but I do like this idea. So you're not going to have like ridiculously looking characters. You're not going to have that guy who wants to roll like a super thin, tiny character who's like an expert at two-handed weapons. You're just not going to see it. If you want to be, a strong warrior, you're going to look like a strong warrior. And so for the people who like to make ridiculous-looking characters, this game is probably going to rub them the wrong way. But I, for one, love the fact that it's, I don't think forcing is the right word, but it's definitely like guiding people into being more immersive in this world, and it's definitely creating a very immersive world. And I love immersion, and I think a lot of people really, really love immersion. And so I don't see why people would necessarily have an issue with this unless, again, you're that person who likes to create like the green-haired, purple-skinned dwarf who's like super thin and really disproportionate. A good example is, God, what's that game? I can't remember what the game's called. It's like a sandbox MMO set like medieval era, and everybody's character just looks so ridiculous. Ark is another good example. There's a lot of people with really ridiculous looking characters in Ark. Um, so yeah, this game's not really going to let you get away with that. Although, if you do want to be a dwarf, they have mentioned that characters from the mountainous areas who may or may not live underground in the mountains are going to be very short, but very sturdily built. So, I mean, dwarves, maybe more or less, maybe not as short and stout as the dwarves that we imagine from, like Warhammer fantasy or Lord of the Rings fantasy, but you can be a little bit shorter and a lot sturdier than your average character. So if you like playing a dwarf, that might be the next best thing. So in conclusion, back in Design Journal number 1, we saw a quote from a character of lore, Inara Starsong, that read, "Every soul is born with a purpose, that they choose the precise time and place in which to be born so they can learn the lessons needed to attain enlightenment." The first part of that time was covered back in Design Journal 2, soul selection, destiny, achievements, and soulmates. The latter part of that place was covered in the last journal on family and family selection. By selecting the combination of soul, birth date, and parents, the player has fully laid out the type of character they're creating and set themselves on a path of discovery, exploration, and storytelling that will last them the next 10 to 16 months. This design journal on character customization concludes our coverage on pregame meta. In future design journals, we'll be focusing on what happens once your character enters the world. And so, now that we're through that, we've got a little bit of time left, so I'll just kind of discuss my thoughts on this and what I'm looking forward to doing with character creation in this game. So I really like the way they've done this. It definitely promotes immersion, and I think that there is not enough credit given to games that do that. Again, I'm not the type to play Ark online with people and create a ridiculous character, so I'm very on board with this. Not everybody's going to be, and that's okay. I don't think they're trying to create this game for everybody. They're trying to create this game the way they want to play it, and obviously there's going to be a lot of people who want to play it as well. Hopefully. I, for one, do. So my idea for character creation, and don't let me catch you guys stealing this, because obviously I think everybody should have their own ideas for what they want to do. It's no fun taking somebody else's. I mean, honestly, I don't really care if you take mine, but what I want to do is I want to start off, and I'm thinking I'm going to start off as a ward, and I want to do it in a very snowy area. So whatever the coldest biome is, probably. And I want to create a very, like, Viking-looking character. He doesn't need to be, like, especially big, but, a slightly above average size guy. Pretty well built. If we can, I'd like to have him pretty tatted up with like some kind of like runic markings up his arms. Like that'd be pretty cool. And like obviously a decent beard. Well, he'll be like 12 if I'm going to start out as a ward, so maybe not quite yet with the beard, but he'll grow one. And what I'd like to do is, work on my smithing, because I do want to work on smithing in this game. I feel like it's going to be really, really interesting with the way they've got like the mini games set up, and they are skill based. So it will take skill to be a smith. You can't just spend the most time. But I'd like to work on my smithing, maybe some other craftsmanship skills, and a little bit of combat, just so I'm not completely helpless in combat. Depending on how quickly the stats level up, I might focus more on combat, just so I can hold my own when I need to. And then I want to find a group of people or some explorers or something, and I want to just kind of go off to, I mean, maybe not uncharted territory, but to unsettled territory. And I want to found a new little village, maybe along the coast, preferably somewhere near mine, because I'd like to set up maybe not necessarily a mining business, although if somebody set up a mining business next to me, that would be ideal. But I want to set up like a blacksmithing business, and, make swords and shields and armor and stuff like that. And, obviously tools and whatever else we need, but I'd like to do it near mine because I feel like that'd be a really like beneficial place to set up a smithing business, because you have the ore right there, and you could be like, okay, you give me free ore and I'll give you free tools, and we'll just kind of like work together. But I'd like to do it in an area maybe near the coast, And there is going to be large expanses of water in this game, and I think if I was going to work on another skill, it would probably be woodworking, because obviously being able to woodwork for shields and stuff like that would be pretty handy. Leatherworking would probably be good too for armor, but woodworking and maybe shipbuilding would be really cool. And I think it would be a lot of fun to have like a little Viking village near like a mine on the coast somewhere, and every once in a while go out on raid boats and raid other villages in some other kingdom where you can't necessarily be charged for it because completely different laws, completely different government. So you go raid, you take some stuff, you come back, you keep doing what you're doing, and oceans in this game are going to be very, very dangerous, and I'm more than happy to take that risk. But from what they've said, if you die in the open ocean, you can potentially be permadead. And there are going to be, I think, sea monsters, or at least lore or legends of sea monsters. So I think that's going to be really cool. But I just think it would be really fun to try to play out, like role play like a Viking in this game. I think it'd be a lot of fun. So that's what I want to do, at least to start out with. The desert biome sounds really, really interesting as well. And there's a few others. I think the dwarves, and I do that in quotes because they're not calling them dwarves. They're just very dwarf-like. I think that would be a lot of fun to try too. But you do get three alts. So maybe I'll do my Viking. Oh, do my hand on camera so you can see me count. My Viking, my dwarf, and my desert character on my 3 alts, and then I'll probably favor the Viking one to start with until I get bored of it or something. But hopefully that doesn't happen, because in this game you are turning over characters not pretty rapidly, but you are going through them, and so you're not going to get that same stagnation as leveling up to level 80 in Skyrim, and then it's like, okay, what do I do with this character now? But yeah, so that's my thoughts on character customization and creation and bloodlines and what I want to do in this game with all those things. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you want to get involved in Chronicles of Elyria's community, you can follow the link in the bottom right corner of this video. If you are going to sign up, I would very much appreciate it if you use my referral code. It doesn't cost you anything to do it. It doesn't hurt you by doing it. All it does is it gives me a little bit of influence so that I can set up an AstartesGaming community in the game, hopefully. But yeah, so as always, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Please feel free to share my videos however you guys see fit. And I will see you guys back here where we take a look at Design Journal number 7.